Assalamu alaikum and good morning. Thank you everyone who responded to my previous post about different topics that I can talk about. I will be covering them over the next couple weeks, and thank you to all those who DM'd me, emailed me, or sent me Facebook messages. I greatly appreciate it. So yesterday I made a post that I'll be talking about inclusion today, and this is a very exciting topic for me, and I think I'm going to divide it into two parts. So this week I'm just going to talk about what inclusion is, and next week I'll focus on different models of inclusion, because there's not one way that it can look. Okay, so inclusion is the action of including someone in a particular group or a particular setting. Okay, so when it applies to special education, that is including students with IEP, students that have special needs, disabilities, including them in the general education population. The general education population are all the non-disabled students. Okay, now with inclusion, that means making sure students are included again in the general education population, making sure they are included in recess, making sure they're included at lunch, making sure they're included in trips, any special programs the school does. They are not excluded at all. They are included in that particular event and in those particular settings, and they get the proper accommodations and modifications pertaining to their particular needs so that they can thrive in that particular setting. Okay, so for example, there could be an IEP student or a few IEP students in a classroom, and they may need certain accommodations and modifications so that they can thrive in their education. So they may need to have their tests may not look like everyone else's tests. Their tests may have fill in the blanks. Their tests may have a word bank on it. Their test may have matching on it, because the content of the questions is there for the student, but how they answer it is different. So that's a modification for that particular child. Other ways to include students in the general education population is, again, you're going to look at that kid's IEP to see what those particular accommodations and modifications that need to take place in a particular classroom or in a particular setting. For instance, if a child is wheelchair bound, you want to make sure that the child can easily move about in the room. You want to make sure that nothing is a barrier for that particular student. Okay, or if a student that uses like a walker or crutches or something like that, you make the setting accessible for the students. So those are just some basic, simple accommodations that you can make for students so that they are included in the classroom. That teachers may feel overwhelmed is because is, just a lack of knowledge, just a lack of education. Some teachers, are a little nervous because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to accommodate this student. This student has so many needs. But that's where I would come in, the special education teacher, to help a teacher make sure the environment and make sure the child or particular students that will be in that environment, that they can thrive. And something that I stress to a lot of teachers is, what you use, you don't just have to use it for this one student. You don't just have to use it for the one student. You can use it for your whole classroom, depending on what it is, because you don't want to water down what you're doing to make it accessible. The content has to be there, but the delivery is different. So, and that's something, and it's something I remind a lot of teachers, you differentiate in your instruction all the time, and that helps to make your learning environment an inclusive environment. Okay, so inclusion is including everyone in a particular environment, in a particular event, and you're not excluding anybody from that. So all special education students have to be included in the general education population. And the general education population are all the non-disabled students. And there are various ways that can look. Okay, now next week I want to dive into the particulars next week. So in some districts you have like your co-teaching model, where you have a special education teacher and a general education teacher teaching together in a classroom. That's one way to help make that's one example of an inclusive model as far as teaching goes. You have the two teachers in there together, and that's one way it can look. You have a teacher that may push in a particular classroom to help support certain particular students that have certain needs. There's a lot of different models of inclusion. There's no one way to do it, and I will go into that more in detail next week, because you have your pros and cons of it, from I hear from some teachers. I've always had a good experience with some of the models that I will go into next week. But another thing that I want to also address is with inclusion, is that it is very beneficial for students with special needs, because it does help them to grow socially. It helps them to grow academically as well, because what they can learn from another peer, they will hold on to it more. Not saying they will hold on to it more so than a teacher, but they'll pick it up quicker from a peer. I even have to think about it. Even when I was in school as a kid, you know how your teacher can, do a lesson and you're like, okay, I think I got it. But then when you have a peer, somebody your age, explain something to you, you can pick it up too. And it helps these students grow more, versus keeping them separate from the general education population in a particular setting with the same kids who work like them. How do you expect them to grow when they're around people like them all the time? That's not very beneficial. They need to have opportunities to be around other students, other non-disabled students, so that they can grow academically, so that they have something to, like, it's like, how it's something, you can see somebody doing something that you want to do, you're like, oh, I want to do that, I know I can do that. And it's like, it's kind of very similar to that. It's like students who have their struggles, when they see a student who does not have the same struggles as them, it's like, okay, I want to do that too. And how the students peer-to-peer relationships, how that can help them grow as well in their education and socially, it is amazing. However, you need to make sure your model, and that your inclusive model works, that it is effective, and that you foster a non-judgmental, a very welcoming, a very bully-free environment in order for these students to thrive. Because if you do not take the time to put things in place to make sure you are fostering that type of environment in your classroom, it's going to be very difficult, and it will be detrimental. And the people that will pay for that are the students, especially the special needs students. So I hope this was helpful for you. Next week I will go into different models of different types of inclusive models, because there's no one particular way to do it. To that next week, and I hope this was again beneficial. If you have any questions regarding anything I spoke about this morning, please send me a DM on my Because of Her Instagram page. Please send me a Facebook message on my Because of Her page, and feel free to email me at jamila@becauseofher.info, and my name is spelled JAM as in Mary, ILAH at becauseofher.info. Thank you so much, and I look forward to coming on here again next week. And it's Friday. Enjoy your Friday and have a great weekend. Assalamu alaikum.